Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
With 7 minutes to play, Tony Tanti completes the hat trick, his third career hat. He takes a pass from behind the net and bangs it between the pads of Romano for his 13th of the season.
Some Canuck gold from back in 85-86. That was November 85. Tony Tanti with the hat trick against a team he would join a few years later, the Pittsburgh Penguins. 6-3 loss to Mario and the boys. We're joined now by Tony Tanti. 8 seasons with the Canucks in the 1980s, 470 points, 8th on the all-time Canucks list. Tony, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Good, Don. How are you?
Good. I don't know where to begin with you. There's so much to talk about. How about this? What are you up to these days?
Well, I've been in the flooring business actually for almost 25 years, if you can believe that. Time goes fast.
The flooring business. So laminate, hardwood, vinyl. What's hot these days?
It's all up. I was in Vegas at the convention last week with my my son-in-law who now works with me, and I've just become a grandfather, which nice. Is sort of life around, and it's been great. I'll give an example. What we've done is, if you've gone to the Empress, you guys are on the island. Mm-hmm. We redid the whole Empress, so we did all the rooms and the corridors and everything else that you see in there.
If you did the whole Empress, I'm guessing you're retired now. That must have been a good gig. Good for you. Awesome. Just looking at your career, January 6, 1983, you get traded to the Canucks from Chicago for Curt Fraser. This is the Canucks coming off the Stanley Cup final. Curt Fraser, incredibly popular in this town, as you became. You were just 19 years old when that trade was made. Did you feel pressure back then, or were you too young to realize it?
I think the only pressure was, I know Curt was, he was very popular in the dressing room and with the fans, and they did come off of, the Stanley Cup Finals the year, just a few months actually earlier, and all I remember is my first game. Going into the hotel, we're on the road, and Roger Nielsen calls me into the hotel and into his room, and he says, just look ahead, keep your mouth shut, and because we traded you for a really popular guy, and that's what I tried to.
A friend of mine told me to ask you this question. What can you tell us about the first time after that trade that you and the Canucks played Chicago, and Curt Fraser's on the ice for the Blackhawks? What was he up to that night?
You know what? It was funny. Curt, we became pretty good friends back in the day. He used to have a big golf tournament in Vancouver for with Buzz Fuller and the Earls group, and you just try to make it feel like another game. You can't get too caught up in who you got traded for or who's out there. I mean, back in the 80s, the schedule was always, it's not like it is now where you play every team, 4 times or whatever you do. Back then we used to play Edmonton and Calgary, 15 times a year. And that was 30% of our schedule. And, the teams back there was no salary cap. So, you're playing, it was pretty tough to, there was dynasties back then. It's a lot tougher to have a dynasty and a salary cap.
Yeah, this buddy of mine made it sound like Curt wanted to drop the gloves with you. What made sorry, Tony, but the answer might be Sundstrom and Gradin, in particular Sundstrom. But what made the Canucks what made the Canucks such a good fit for you?
I think it's the same as anyone who's young and comes into the league. It's opportunity. I got the opportunity to, my first year I got traded in January. I only played, I think, 39 or 40 games. And I think that helped, got my feet wet, knew what the league was all about. I became really good friends with Patrick Sundstrom, and we just hit it off. And then, the following season, we just gelled, and it took off. And it was different back then. We had first few years we had Tiger on our off wing, and it was a lot more intimidation, I think, back in the day than there is now. I mean, the penalties today, for hooking and slashing were not penalties when we played, or cross-checking, right?
Hey, Tony, 250 goals in Vancouver. You went on a 5-year stretch there where you averaged 40, but the team success wasn't there. How tough was the losing? I mean, you got all this success, you're scoring goals, but the team wasn't going anywhere. How tough was that?
It's really tough. I mean, every day, after a game, you want to feel ready for the next game. But when you're losing a lot, it's just it becomes a rut. And after the game, you don't sleep as well, and you just don't. You're not as excited to get back to the rink. So it wears on you after a while. But you just, as a professional, you just have to put your head down and work the next day, because if you don't, back then there was Tony Gallagher and other guys that would,
So Gallagher was tough on you, eh? Gallagher was tough, Tony?
You know what, Tony? I actually like Tony. He was actually he was fair. And that's what everyone's got to realize. I think a lot of the athletes are a little bit too sensitive. If you didn't play well, if you didn't play well, and if you get rips, you deserve it. I mean, you're getting paid the money to perform. But
Tony, today in Canadian markets is tough with Twitter and media and all that stuff. Was it tough back then in Canadian markets, in your eyes?
Well, it was all newspaper back then, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot more newspaper. Today there's cameras and social media and all this other stuff. I think it's definitely a lot tougher. I mean, we didn't have the training that the kids have today, where they have coaches on how to talk to the press and things like that. We thrown in there and figure it out, and I think that's that's a big difference. I mean, when I came to the Canucks, the following year after I played half a season, I used to stay at the Johnny Canuck. I don't know if you guys know where that was. It was right.
Yeah.
And I think I was 4th or 5th in scoring in the league by Christmas time. And I remember me being in the dressing room at the Pacific Coliseum, and Roger Nielsen was there with his dog Mikey, and Roger looked up, and because I didn't really talk to Roger very much, I was, "Where are you staying?" I said, "I'm staying at the Johnny Canuck." He goes, "What are you doing there?" He goes, "I don't know. No one's ever told me to get a place." And he goes, "Well, go get." That was it.
Oh, wow. What a great story.
Yeah.
I did that today.
Yeah, no kidding. You're dabbling in some minor hockey with Dave Babbage coaching. What's the biggest difference you're seeing in players today than when you were in minor hockey and going through the ranks?
Oh, 100%. It's growing up. When I grew up, hockey was 6 or 7 months a year, and and the rest was playing soccer and road hockey and things like that. It's today it's a 12-month coaches, things like that. There's no question that's the biggest difference.
Back to the Johnny Canuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in North Burnaby. And that Cassiar and Hastings, I didn't know anybody ever stayed there. It had a bad reputation. What was the flooring like in the Johnny Canuck, Johnny?
All I remember, Don, was me taking my clothes and the Canucks, our laundry bags, and taking it over to Flager, and him washing it and me taking it back home. And I lived like that probably for 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the building is still there, as a matter of fact. Hey, I'm looking at your Hockey DB page. You were listed at 5'9", 185. And yet you scored so many goals in front of the net. Why was that the place for you? Where did that courage come from, Tony, at that size?
I think a lot. It's hard to say. I mean, I loved scoring goals. I absolutely loved it, and that's the only way I knew how to score. It was around the net or deflections, and I remember coming into when I was with Chicago. I was in Vancouver. We were playing an exhibition game, and Dave Taylor with the LA Kings, he drives me into the boards, and where the boards meet the glass, my face there, and I lose 8 teeth all at once, and and 19 years old, and he stands over me and he goes, "Welcome to the league, rookie," and that was, if you're not going to stand up for yourself, you're not going to last long, and and people have to realize, like, he didn't even get a penalty for that, and today it's just like it's a completely different game. The game is way better today, and I wish I was playing today, not for the money, but just for the style of play that I played.
Okay, before we let you go, just on that subject, how do you think you'd do in today's game?
Oh, I think I would do fine. I think again, that would be, I would do fine if I was put with the right players. I mean, you look at the Canucks today. If you're put, with Pettersson or these guys, and all you got to do is get open. And if you got a quick shot or deflection, and you're going to score, right? But if you're put on the fourth line with grinders, and that's not your style, you're not going to produce. So it really, again, it comes down to the situation that you're put in and the opportunity that you have.
You ever do an endorsement deal for the Johnny Canuck, Tony? I can't believe somebody stayed there.
Tony did.
Morning.
Yeah,
it was.
That's right.
Then there was a pass on the corner, the Villa, what was it called? I can't remember.
A pub?
But it was. Yeah. What was it called?
Well, there was Jake O'Grady's, I remember, up the street a bit, and
yeah,
like you say, the McDonald's. And
that was my lifestyle back then.
The life of an NHL star in the 1980s. Tony, we could go on and on about this. We got to get you back on soon. We sure appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Don.